All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started now. So you are in room 108 for the session, Badging the Library with the Library Badging Your Own Place. It is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. So we have Emily Rimland, the Kaylin Librarian for Learning Innovations, Chris Gamrat, who is instructional designer at College of IST, and Victoria Raish, who is a graduate student in learning innovations. So without further ado, I turn it over to the presenters.
Great. So, is this working?
Yes.
Okay. We did just want to, this is an interactive session. Maybe you didn't know that, but it is going to be interactive, and we wanted to start out with this poll. I can already see that 5 of you responded, but if you haven't done this before, you can either respond by text message on your phone, or you can go to that website listed there, thepollev.com/erimland, and respond to this poll that way. So you have your choice, but it will gather these responses, and then we can reveal. But we were kind of curious just to gauge familiarity with digital badges before we get started. So we kind of want to know, do we have a beginner audience? Do we have somewhere in the middle? Or do we have experts? So I'll give you a few moments to respond if you haven't already to this poll, like I said, either by web address or by text message. Does anybody have any questions about how to work the poll? Yes?
I went to the website and it's actually showing a different question. It's showing a question about information literacy.
Oh, that's the one for later. Thank you for letting me know that. I will push this poll instead. But if you respond to that one, that's cool, because we'll come back to that one.
I responded to both, so I'm like,
So I see we are up to 6.
Is it possible to turn on the lights in the front just so that you can see the screen better?
They told me no, but we could try. I asked the same question.
Hang on, this box does things.
Oh, we're up to 10. That's excellent.
Alright. Maybe it doesn't do things. I don't want to turn off the lights. No.
Nope, okay. We're up to 11. I know that's not everybody that's here in the room, but we will reveal the results. So hopefully you can see that in the back, but it looks like the majority of the people that responded are in the middle. They know a little bit about badges, but want to know more. And so you're at an excellent place then, because we're going to tell you a lot more about badges. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who will get us started today. Good.
Cool.
With this?
Okay. Maybe I don't want this. So before we talk about the main subject of today's session, which is badges at the library, just wanted to quickly talk about what are badges in general. So there are these clickable digital representations of learning. If you were at the earlier session this morning where we were talking about badges, you'll know that they are representations of a lot of different types of learning experiences. They can be skill and knowledge acquisition. They can be accomplishments for things that are much larger. That's one of the beauties of badges, is that they really can be a wide range of sizes. I don't know if this is actually doing anything.
I think it's mainly for recording purposes.
Okay.
It's a little in
So there's a All right, how's that? Better? Good. Okay. So there are a lot of different ways that you can capture these experiences, and badges is one of those. It actually makes it an easy way to capture a lot of what an educator is looking for in terms of experiences that they're evaluating and looking at and trying to instill in their students. It also captures the evidence that goes along with that. So all the information that's generated by the learner and then presented out to whoever's assessing it, and then ultimately to employers, grad school evaluators, people like that, people that really want to understand that learning. So at Penn State, we are working on a digital badging platform. in the fall of 2012, I was talking with Dr. Kyle Peck up here, and I was saying that that we were working on a project for teacher professional development. I said that it would be interesting to try to do something at a Penn State application. And Kyle said, well, yeah, that makes sense. And hey, there's this thing called COIL. It's new, it's starting up. It's this opportunity to submit a grant proposal and get some startup money. Because there's a lot of times where we want to study something or do research or try to explore an education technology, but it doesn't exist. So there needs to be kind of this building thing. So we proposed an application that fall, and it was accepted, and it became the Lifelong Learning Landscape. And we've been working on that since January of last year. So the system has been developed to a point where it essentially does basic core functionality. So a person can go into the system, create digital badges. They can edit them, add in content requirements, that sort of thing. They can, when they are happy with what's involved in the badge, they can publish it. It's then out there where students can see it and then decide, I'd like to do that badge. They can put it into a shopping cart or queue or list of experiences, badges that they would like to earn. They can work on it for a while, submitting evidence along the way. When they feel comfortable with what they've submitted so far, they can then send it out to an approver. That approver evaluates it and based on the rubrics that are presented from the badge creator. Sometimes these are the same person, sometimes not. They'll make, based on that, on the rubric, they'll then say, great job, here's the badge. See the girls happy there? If not, they'll say, you're missing this piece or something like that. Really like you to resubmit. Here's some additional feedback along the way. And so that cycle repeats. When badges are awarded, they then go out to this internal portfolio. So badge earners can then review all their badges. They can then at that point, they can do two additional things. They can make their badges public. They can then toggle on a button that presents it into a public portfolio. So for example, in the future, if you went to badges.psu.edu/Chris Gamrat, you would see my public badges. The next thing that students can also do is that they can send those badges out to the Mozilla badging framework. So out there, that's a platform that's being developed by Mozilla, where badges that are developed by a number of different use cases can all be created and submitted and placed into there and organized as a much larger portfolio from a number of different learning organizations. So we developed all that, but we didn't do it by ourselves. We had a lot of collaboration. We worked very closely with the library. We worked closely with a number of folks from the College of Education, from so many groups, I can't even name them all. But that feedback was incredibly helpful. We had discussions on Yammer. We had every 2 weeks, roughly, we had a meeting where we sat in a room and we asked philosophical questions like, what is a badge? What is it? And then we'd ask really nuts and bolts questions like, this interface does not work for me, and I need it to do this and this and this use case. And we really addressed a lot of those concerns, and that was something that really had the users right next to the developers and having that ongoing conversation. And that was big. So we used an agile development process. It was every 2 weeks we would come up with new things, present them to the stakeholders and interested parties, and say, what's next? What do we need to build into this thing? And then we also had a lot of opportunities for shared examples and experiences. This is going to be one of those, probably the largest group that we've had, I think. And we want to kind of share out in terms of, this is what the library's been thinking about in terms of badges. And that might help you think about how you might want to apply badges in your own context. And in the future, we're hoping to have ongoing discussions about, hey, I'm trying to build badges for the library or the College of IST or liberal arts. How are you doing it? What are ways that we can collaborate? There are a lot of groups that are thinking about things like soft skills, teamwork, leadership, ethics, sustainability. So how do you describe those sort of experiences, and what are things that could be shared across colleges, departments, that sort of thing. So we really want to understand how these applications are being used and how we can start to develop this sort of thing to benefit the colleges and be able to benefit the students and really represent how they're learning. So with that, I'm going to pass it over.
So you're going to have another opportunity to respond to a poll. So I'm going to bring that up if you'd like to try this again. So the same goes for this one. You can respond either by text message or at the online site that's listed there. And I think your result is in there from before, so that's good. But I'm going to talk a little bit about information literacy, and the use case we're talking about today for digital badges is within the library. And information literacy is something that's near and dear to every librarian's heart. And I'm just kind of curious to know how much, kind of like the last question, how familiar you are with this concept of information literacy. So I'll give you a few more moments to respond, and then we'll take a look at the results. We're up to 10. We had 11 last time. Back at 11. Can we beat it? Can we beat it? Well, if you're still oh, yes, we got to 12. Okay. Let's see. Wow.
That's a lot.
Majority said they're all about information literacy, so that is excellent. There's still, it looks like.
There's no middle ground between sounds familiar and all about. So.
You're right, you're right.
Not all about.
So it wasn't very granular, you're right. But there are a few folks in the other category. So I'll just do a quick overview of what information literacy is. And this is what we call the classic definition. It's basically the ability to find, evaluate, and use, cite information and different resources. So librarians spend a lot of time teaching these type of skills to students in various classes. I call it the classic definition because it is now changing. They're actually rewriting the definition and the standards, but those aren't out quite yet. Well, they're out in draft form. But we're still going to use this definition of information literacy for the basis of our digital badges that we'll talk more about today. So I took that definition and I kind of put it in my own words. And information literacy, these skills that we're trying to teach students about finding and using information, really are lifelong learning skills. It's going to be skills that they will need throughout their life, throughout their career. It's not just for one course or one project. They really are critical thinking skills. We do a lot with evaluation of information, whether or not a website is credible or reliable, and determining that isn't really a black or white kind of thing. So it's really just an example of how information literacy is a critical thinking skill. It's interdisciplinary. Like I said, it's not just used in one project or one class. It's used throughout different subject areas, different disciplines. And it's something that's, as Chris alluded to, not reflected in a transcript or a resume all the time. It doesn't come through. It's kind of an integrated skill along with doing other things. But we thought that made it a prime target for digital badges because this way a student can show that they have these skills. And lastly, just a couple challenges that we have at Penn State. I'm sure other schools have it as well, but again, reasons why we thought digital badges would be good for information literacy skills. There is a lot of unbalanced instruction for information literacy. Sometimes I'll see the same student 4 times in the same session, and they'll say, I've been here 4 times, like why can't I get beyond this kind of instruction? Or there's also students that have never, you'll hear students, they say it like it's a badge of pride. I've never set foot in the library. I've never used those things. So it's very uneven, and we'd like to kind of balance that out. And so we see badges as one way of doing that. Also the scalability, we probably couldn't, at Penn State, we're so huge, it's unlikely that we could teach every student in the classroom in a face-to-face traditional environment. So we feel like badges would help with that. And it's also, sometimes it's difficult to teach the higher level information literacy skills because we may only see most of those students in CAS 100 or English 15. And so they get the real basics, but they're not getting the higher order thinking skills that would come later. So badges would let us expose students to those higher level skills. So I think from now, I'm going to transition over to Tori, and she's going to talk a little bit about the survey we did with employers. We were very interested in how employers perceive badges and information literacy skills and what skills would be really valuable to them when they're hiring students. Because we felt like if they have buy-in, if employers have buy-in, that'll give digital badges a lot of credibility. So she's going to talk about the survey and break it down for you. You need that.
Yeah. Okay, so we used the same survey company that Penn State Survey Research Center uses when they do their surveys. So they have a panel of national employees that they send these surveys out to. So that's where our population came from. Okay, so 188 individuals responded originally to the survey, but only 114 met our criteria, which was that they had to hire recent college graduates and that they finished the whole survey. And we expected 100, so that's more than we expected. Okay, so most of these employers were from the private sector, some were from public, and a few were from nonprofit. And there was a lot of government representation as well.
When you say as well, is that public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this is kind of broken down, the people that we were recruiting from, which we were really happy with this because we didn't specify anything when we contacted the company about what kind of employers we wanted. So professional services is like automotive or consulting, anything that provided a service to an employer. IT was really big, and engineering, which we thought were important because those are fields where badges could conceivably be used pretty easily, and then medicine and finance as well. And anything other had less than 4% representation, so it just got grouped together. Okay, so these are just the application patterns of the people we surveyed. So in terms of getting employers to accept digital badges, it would make sense to target people that hire recent college graduates, since that's who we're specifically designing our badges for. So either maintain the same or hire more was the dominant response. Hire less only got 6%. And so the number of applications received ranged from 1 to 100, and there were some outliers, so the median of 25 is a better representation than the mean. Okay, and these are the credentials that their new employees have to have, and so we were targeting companies that required a bachelor's degree because that's who we're designing our information literacy badges for. So the fact that 33% that was the requirement was good for us in terms of adding credibility to the employers we were surveying. Okay, so we asked a few questions on the interest in digital badges. Most of the survey was focused on the information literacy skills so that we could design our badges to reflect the skills employers found important. But we did ask them their initial perceptions or expectations because, you know, we expected that most of them have never heard of badging before. So we were like really happy with the results. We did not think it would be this positive at the beginning. So interest in using badges, only 5% said no right off the bat. A lot said maybe, so you know that indicates that some education or introduction of the badges to the workplace would be necessary. But in our survey, we did include an image and say what the badge included. So we did give them some background information on what it would be. And then the second part is how many badges they would review, like if they were given a page kind of like a resume. So the average number was 4 badges that they would review. And so I think that when we analyze it more, we might see it broken down by number of applications they receive and number of badges they'd be willing to review in terms of workload, but I think that that speaks to how we, as in higher education, would design our badges, because if students are only going to be able to put on 4 or 5 that really matter to an employer, how big do those badges have to be that they would put on? How many skills do they have to represent? Okay, and then we just asked, so sometimes they have like keyword tools if they get a crazy number of applications. And so if there were a tool to filter the badges by keyword, so they would only receive ones that were relevant to the position they were looking for. 55% said maybe, but this, from the people who before said maybe or no, this increased their response to accepting badges. Okay, and then this is just one example of the kinds of questions we asked on information literacy. So the next, it's just a percentage, it's not really analyzed yet, but the next thing just shows what skills employers expect students to have and which ones that they would not necessarily expect them to. And so this is one way we can think about designing our badges to maybe fill those skills that employers don't expect right now, so those students would have an edge. So for example, 61% of employers expect students to have that job-specific knowledge, right? So if they're in some kind of major, they expect that major to carry over to the skills they would need on the job, whereas only 18% expected them to be able to find patterns and make the connections between various activities. And so maybe we can design badges to help students learn those skills where they might not necessarily be learning them in college right now. Yeah. And then, so I'm just going to talk real briefly about how we're designing our badges, and then we can pass out. Did he pass them out? We can pass out the activity for you to work on together. So pretty much it's a iterative cycle. You know, we're thinking about using a design-based research methodology to design them. But we use the ACRL information literacy standards, which is where the definition of information literacy comes from. And then the employer survey we're using. And then also we did a focus group with students in the fall who were taking an information literacy class at the library. And we found 3 students who would be willing to user design with us and user test to help refine our badges before they go live. Okay, so we have created 12 to 14 badges that are going to be in this L3 platform that Penn State has. So we've turned 3 of them into these little handouts. And so if you just want to work with someone next to you or someone behind you, wherever you want to work, and just critique our badges, there'll be criteria on the next page of what you're supposed to look for. And then we'll come back at the end and discuss them. Yeah.
So are we assuming these people have a college degree? I'm trying to kind of,
The employers, who has a college?
but who are you making the badge? Who is going?
Undergraduate students.
Undergraduate students.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, we'll go over the next steps at the end. Yeah. Yeah. So these are some of the questions you can consider when you're looking at them.
So, what is it we're supposed to do? Is that the one up above here? Do we go to the L3 and actually make the badge?
No, you can just look at the handout.
Or just review and have,
Yeah.
Old school
Yeah.
paper.
you find people that can say that one we have?
You can.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're supposed to evaluate your badges. Where do we find them?
They hand out.
The handout. That's our badge. Yeah. So if you look on the flip side, that's where we have the steps. So because of the word length, we only put 1 full step on there, and the rest of them are just like, generally, this is what we ask. Yeah.
That was interesting.
The survey.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw that.
Okay.
Oh, the
Your data.
data.
And I just heard, like, in general, like, saying, yeah, they're not going to review too many.
There's more where that came from.
Yeah.
I'm actually working on a similar one for IST employers. But I'm apparently only allowed to ask 5 questions. So maybe one thing I'd like to talk to you two about is like if there were additional things that you want to know. Maybe those would be ones that I would want to throw in.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can look at ours because we had 17% IT was who responded.
Yeah.
And so you could look at their responses.
I'd like to see your questions too. And one of the things I was thinking of doing is having like several possible skills or badges you might do and say like rate which ones you think you'd like to see. You know?
Yeah.
Like a Likert thing of like 1 to 5. Is this important to you? So that's really the only question I have right now. I need to think about it more. But hey, we were only talking about it on Friday, so.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a round, just make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
everybody knows.
Yeah.
So take a few more moments, maybe wrap up your thoughts, but I want to come back together as a group and have a little bit of discussion. So, yeah, pencils down. I like that. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of sense of like what goes into a badge and a little bit more of the granular level of what's in a digital badge, and specifically the badges that we're creating based on the information that Tori was telling you about.
They take a lot longer to like create anything.
No doubt.
Through everything.
Yes. So we just want to kind of open it up to feedback. Like, what did you think? We can use these questions as kind of a guideline, but we're just interested in your sort of initial response or feedback. You know, like, what did you think of the badge you reviewed? Did you think of other things that could be helpful to help learn that skill? Is there something in there that you said, wait a second, that's not going to work at all? Do you have questions about what was in there? So just like to open it up. Anybody want to get things started? Yes, Barb.
When you have a badge, like the one that I have is the first badge in a series of 2 badges. So they actually, and then it says they need to save their information from this badge to earn the next. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So the assignments, the activities that they have to do for that badge, they have to use again. And so like whenever they create them, don't just delete them or put them in a temporary file on their computer.
So, so you would do 2 badges instead of having multiple steps to earn just 1 badge? You know,
Yeah,
there's-
if that badge would have been 1, it would have been 9 steps. And we felt
Okay.
like that was a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the topic of that badge?
This was forming your research topic, and this was part 1. And I did wonder too, the image that you give of the badge doesn't match the name of the badge. Is that?
Did we
should it?
goof on that?
Yeah, it's like, it's because we just got them from Jason.
Oh, okay. That was our goof then.
Yeah.
But it would.
It would,
match.
yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Okay.
That was just user operator error.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So, I mean, the name of the badge, it says forming your research topic part 1. That really probably wouldn't be the name of the badge.
Yeah, it would be forming your research topic and then keywords.
Okay.
Should
And
be
is
it,
the
yeah.
savvy searcher part of?
That is the, so once students earn, so we have kind of a structure where they earn these lower level badges, and then it goes into a meta badge. And so once they earn that one, and I think we had another savvy searcher one, and there's 2 more, then they would just, instead of having to put those individual badges, they would just have the savvy searcher meta badge, and then it would say that they earned those 4 badges.
Oh. Do you have this actually, like, in the platform, the LL3, that we could see what it looks like?
It is in there.
Not the entire structure, but all the badges are in there. So I'm not quite sure which thing you're
Well,
asking.
so you're saying that if they earn these 4, then would they have to do something to convert it to this meta badge?
They would,
No.
they would just have to, for the meta badge, they would just have to submit their 4 badges that they've earned.
Okay.
And then
So-
it would get numbered.
So one of the criteria they could submit in the platform is another badge. Like that can be evidence. So to earn the meta badge, they would just have to like add the 3 that they already had, and that would earn them the meta badge.
Is the meta badge, is that the only one that shows up then for them?
No.
You still see all the other ones that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does someone, let's say, because ours was time management, we take screenshots.
Mm-hmm.
So they upload the screenshots, and then does, let's say, a human come and look and see if they actually give, they didn't just take random screenshots and upload them or something?
Right, yeah, no, robots aren't running, yeah. No, it is, in this case, it would be me or Tori or maybe one of my colleagues reviewing that evidence to make sure that, it is up to snuff. And if you can remember that workflow that Chris showed at the very beginning, if we felt it wasn't good enough, we would send it back to the student and say, like, nope, didn't quite get it, maybe try this, and then they could submit it again. Yeah. Up front here. Okay.
Well, ours is time management,
Mhm.
and we were discussing the activities here in order to get the time management badge is a little bit like not reflective enough. Like we can't really judge how you are good at managing time by doing some, like, I'm not sure how the project calculator exactly works, but
Mhm.
this is like more like a lifetime skill that you can achieve. And if I'm an employer and I look at this badge, I'm like, how credible is this badge, like reflect someone's, time management skill?
Mhm.
One way I would look at it is, so there's a project calculator, but also if they had to look at, so instead of time management, maybe time management tools, so that it's a little bit more specific. And so there's this idea that, okay, I have a project that I'm going to go through and manage, but as students, it's not the project that kills you, it's picking up your kids from school, and it's making dinner and all this other stuff. So if there's like more of a daily calendar where you put in all your classes, and it says like how much time you have available and when you're going to put in family and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more holistic, so they're reflecting, because everyone can do a project. We don't have a project, we have 10. So that might be a way to make it a little bit more real world.
No, I think thank you, that's good feedback. In the back row, they had a couple hands.
I had the same issue, and that was, it looks like this is a time management badge. But if you look at it more carefully, what it really is about organizing your time to put together the information pieces that you've got. So that there's a misperception problem that this is creating, that, as the person that said, a boss is going to look at this and say, oh, you now know time management, and the answer really is not so much.
Okay, so maybe it's just a naming convention issue there, more so than the.
It's really for freshmen that might not have, so it's for them, in their classes.
Right. Was there your hand up in the back? Oh, okay. Oh, do you want to go up here?
Yeah, I would kind of build on some of these. We had the searching badge, and one of the things that popped out at us was that reflective piece maybe needs to, there were not enough instances where the student was documenting that they had actually been thinking about, in this particular case, it was the bias issue, bias in your search engine searches and stuff like that. They did a search and then they did a presentation, and it was maybe not necessarily clear to us how exactly they were going to get to one to the other, how that was going to be documented.
Okay.
From start to the finish. So that was one thing. And then as I've been listening to these comments and stuff like that, this particular badge is dealing with the issue of bias so much, and not so much just searching in general. So I might just make a point that the badge names that I'm hearing, maybe we want to tighten up those names a little bit. Maybe make them a little bit more descriptive, because searching, okay, I can type something in, an employer might say, oh, okay, you can go into a search engine, get something, but that's not what this badge is really about. This badge is being able to critically analyze what you're doing in terms of searching.
Okay, good. Was there, Chris? Oh, you're telling me 3 minutes? Okay, we'll do in the back row there, and then we'll wrap up.
I also concerned about how you turn this management into a habit instead of you do as required and earn the badge, and then you just drop it and go back to the original you. I think it happens it's just bad. You do it and then you earn it. It doesn't mean anything. Also for what you said about it's for first year students, but I feel like for second or third year it's better for them, because first year everything is so fresh and you would like to try everything, and I think students intend to finish work by time, but for second year or third year,
I'm so tired, I don't feel like doing anything, maybe it's better for them. And also, instead of like you push the budget out for all the people, I feel it's like you just send it out, but for just the sake for people who have those problems, like those procrastination, and to say, if you have this, we can help you to change this. And you just give us feedback, you need help, and then we will just watch you, like how you earn this badge and help you solve your problem.
Great. All right, thank you. We just had a couple, thank you for the feedback. I mean, we'd be willing to, you can feel free to get in touch with us after the session or email us as a follow-up if you have any other thoughts that you wanted to get to us, but we really appreciate your feedback. We just wanted to quickly just tell you what our next steps are, because we really kind of are at the beginning, sort of middle of this project. Tori just got her graduate exhibition accepted, and that's going to be 2 weeks from now. So if you go to that, you could see her session, and that'll include more analysis of the survey, because we just gave you kind of a preview today. There is a lot more data that we have that we're still analyzing. We're planning to meet with World Campus instructional designers to consider how these badges might be different or used for distance students. We're going to be creating more badges, and we're also, as Tori mentioned, we have a small group of student testers who are going to be trying these out in the L3 platform, and then we're also hoping to initiate a pilot with a class. So if you have a class and you'd like to try these in your class, we would love to talk to you. Or if you have a colleague that might be willing to try them, we are going to be looking for some groups to do like a small pilot with them. So those are our next steps. And we're pretty much out of time, so I just wanted to put our contact information on the slide there. Feel free to follow up with us if you have a question or want to know more. But thank you guys so much for coming to our session and taking a look at our badges and providing the feedback that you did to us. Thanks.
Thank you.